Have you ever wondered if a normal person suddenly woke up from a 17-year coma and insisted that all that time he had lived in another world full of dragons, magic, and terrifying battles? How would you react? Welcome to the story of Ethan Blake, an otherworldly uncle who is considered a freak by the modern world, but possesses the power to make even ancient dragons bow down. Waking up in modern Tokyo with the mindset of a mage who survived the world of Ferenthos, Ethan doesn't try to be a hero, but accidentally becomes a symbol. In this video, we will embark on a strange journey where the real world and the other world collide, where a person who belongs nowhere finds the strongest meaning in life. And if you love stories that are both unusual and touching, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss new journeys with the uncle no one believes, but no one forgets. In the fall of 2020, after 18 years of being immersed in the darkness of an endless sleep, the world once again welcomed a strange thing. A middle-aged man, gray hair, cloudy eyes, hands trembling with time, opened his eyes after nearly 2 decades of living like a zombie in the hospital. It was Ethan Blake, the uncle of the young man Leo Donovan, who had not remembered his uncle since he was 7 years old. Before the accident, Ethan was a 22-year-old college student, addicted to games, quiet and withdrawn. One day, he was hit by a truck on his way to buy the last Sega retro game disc, and from then on, Ethan disappeared from this world, until today. Leo, now 25 years old, received a call from the hospital with an incredulous tone. "Your family member has woken up." On the way to the hospital, a series of thoughts rushed through his mind. Is he still himself? Does he remember anyone? Can he live like a normal person again? But when the door to the hospital room opened, what met his eyes was not the bewildered look of someone who had just emerged from a coma, but a sharp, alert gaze. Ethan sat up, his mouth muttering a strange language that did not belong to any phonetic system Leo had ever heard. His eyes scanned the room as if searching for a trap or an invisible monster. Leo panicked. "Uncle Ethan, it's me, Leo!" He tried to call, but it seemed that no signal was received. He muttered, then jumped up, held his hands out in front of him, and spoke a magical language, like a chant from a fantasy game. Nothing happened. No light, no thunder, no special effects like in a game. Just silence. After a while, he stopped, frowned, and exclaimed in Japanese, "Is this it? Japan?" As if he had just fallen from a distant planet. An unbelievable story. When the nurse and doctor came to check on him, Ethan just nodded vaguely. He couldn't remember the government, history, technology, and even asked Leo, "Does Sega still dominate the console market? Or has Nintendo taken it over?" Leo blinked, embarrassed. "Uncle, Sega only makes games now. Sony and Nintendo have split the market." The uncle was silent for a few seconds. And then, his face changed. Instead of being sad about losing 18 years of his life, he muttered, "So that weird kingdom wasn't a dream." Leo thought he had post-traumatic stress disorder, but no. Ethan began to tell that for the past 18 years he had not been lying motionless in a hospital bed, but had been living in another world called Ferenthos, a land ravaged by war filled with magic, dragons, and strange races. Evidence from another world? "Don't you believe me? Let me show you," Ethan said, pulling out an old glass jar. He chanted an incantation, waving his hands slightly, but nothing happened. That's the wrong word," he muttered. Then he switched back to Japanese. This time, a light breeze blew up, lifting the jar off the table. Leo's mouth fell open. A family torn apart by reality. After Ethan fell into a coma, the Donovan family fell into crisis. Leo's parents, Ethan's brother and sister-in-law, argued endlessly about whether to keep him alive or not. They couldn't afford the hospital bills, and they didn't have any faith that Ethan would wake up. Eventually, the family split into 2 factions, cut ties, and stopped seeing each other. Only Leo remained, the only one who quietly visited his uncle once a year, just to hope for a miracle. And today, that miracle actually happened. But it wasn't like any miracle Leo had ever imagined. The YouTuber uncle and the modern world Ethan gradually integrated into modern life, or at least tried to. But he still lived as if he were in some old game. Leo showed him how to use his smartphone, YouTube, Google Translate, but Ethan still asked, "Why doesn't this machine have any buttons? It's so annoying." After a few days, he discovered that he could perform magic on video. Leo immediately suggested, "You should open a YouTube channel. Maybe you can make money." And so, Ethan the Arcane Survivor, the first YouTube channel dedicated to performing real magic, was born. But the internet is not like the other world. The first comment was, "The camera angle is terrible. It looks like cheap effects." Even a fifth grader would know this is CGI. Ethan was furious. Leo laughed. "Welcome to the modern world, Uncle." A strange start to a new journey. And that was just the beginning. Ethan's memories of the other world, the creatures he met, the women who saved him, the battlefields he conquered, were still there. But to tell them all, it would take more than one conversation. Leo didn't know if what his uncle told him was true or just the hallucinations of someone who had been in a coma. But deep down, he realized, if there's some truth to it, then maybe I'm living next to one of the most special people on this planet. Leo's small rented room has now become a mobile magic headquarters where Uncle Ethan, who calls himself the magician who survived the world of Ferenthos, practices magic, edits YouTube videos, and develops his personal media channel with the ambition of surpassing 1,000 subscribers. However, when sitting in front of the computer screen, he looks like a child who has just fallen out of the timeline. Every button on the keyboard is a mystery. Every term like algorithm, like, engagement, sounds like the voice of a demon. Leo just sighs, sits next to him, and explains every little thing, from how to save videos tagged to avoid content marked as trash. But Ethan doesn't care. What he really cares about is how to prove to the world that he is a true hero of another world. Flashback, a world where heroes are cursed, Ethan begins to tell. In a flat voice, his eyes were sad like an old traveler who had just left the battlefield. "The first day I woke up in Ferenthos, I thought I was dead. But no. I opened my eyes in a wild forest, a different language, no friends, no guidance. The only wish Ethan was granted, and it was also the thing that saved him from death, was the ability to understand and speak every living language. A seemingly trivial skill, but it was the only key for him to begin his journey among all species. No one believes, no one needs, no one loves. Ethan saves a girl who was attacked by goblins. She scolds him. "I don't need you to save me. Don't think that I'm weak and have the right to touch me." He is silent, not angry, not arguing. In your world, being saved is a favor. Here it's an insult. Leo chuckled but couldn't help but think. In modern society, it was probably like that somewhere. Memories on memories. Misunderstood rescues. Ethan continued, still in a monotone voice, still with emotionless eyes, as if he himself didn't know if he was telling a story to remember or to forget. Another time, he saved 3 villagers from being attacked by a ghost pig. A woman, her hands trembling, her eyes red, looked at him and knelt down to beg, "Please, if you intend to eat us, eat me first." He choked, not because of the words, but because of the look of fear, the look that no hero would want to receive from the person he saved. An upside-down world in Ferenthos, those with power who were not of noble birth were considered a disaster. Those who helped but were not part of a legitimate sect were called heretics. People who do not belong to any empire will be thrown into prison as a dangerous creature. Ethan once created a magical vase capable of filling itself with water by magic to save a village from thirst. The result? They broke the vase, tied me to a pole, and talked about hanging me because that magic is not in the Light Bible. The beauty of kindness, sometimes a double-edged sword. "I used to believe that kindness could touch people's hearts," Ethan said, his eyes now shining with skepticism. "But I learned that, in that world, kindness without status is trampled like trash." Leo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The story sounded like a global satire disguised as fantasy. From a Superman from another world to a poor YouTube uncle, a week after waking up, Ethan knew how to use magic to make commercials to earn money. The sparkling hand gestures, some made-up incantations, and the absurdly serious expressions. His clips earned him 60,000 yen in advertising money. Leo asked him, "You saved the world, now you're filming a soft drink commercial? Is this world that cruel?" Ethan replied, "No, this world is still much kinder than Ferenthos." Games and faith, the uncle's last weapon. No one understood Ethan, no one believed Ethan, but the uncle survived because he had a strong belief. Games are the only thing that won't betray me. Games are where the rules are clear, kindness is rewarded, efforts are not stolen, evil must be punished, and most importantly, every character, no matter how eccentric, can become a hero. Leo smiled slightly after hearing this. Maybe I'm just a lost NPC trying to become the main character. A naked truth in a humorous guise. People laughed when Ethan said, "In that world, I was once threatened by a girl to turn into a mount." People burst out laughing when they learned that a monk asked him to give up his life for evil magic. People laughed because it was a joke. Only Ethan, the one who actually lived that story, didn't laugh. Conclusion: a world that doesn't need heroes. Leo's room now has another weirdo, an uncle from another world that no one understands, no one believes, but Leo knows, somewhere in those seemingly crazy stories, is a very human truth, the desire to be recognized, to be loved, to be understood. No matter what world, everyone needs a place to belong. Hey Leo, in this era, does anyone still play Radiant Story? The question popped up on a rainy afternoon as Uncle Ethan sat typing out a description for a new YouTube clip, his eyes glued to the dusty game box. Leo turned around confused. "What Radiant?" Ethan sighed. "I knew it. In this era, no one remembers the masterpieces that used to be treasures anymore." Games, where memories never betray. In the chaotic world Ethan experienced, where magic was controlled by churches, where kindness was seen as a trap. Games, yes, games, were the only place he found something called fairness. In games, if you grind enough, you level up. If you're smart, you beat the boss. And in real life? If you're good, people say you're weak. If you're good, people say you're lucky. If you fail, people call you a burden. Ethan once said, "When I was in Ferenthos, I used the tactics from Final Fantasy VI to defeat an army of 300 monsters with just a spear." Leo was surprised. "And it really worked?" Ethan nodded. They had never seen anyone so reckless, because in that world no one thought that a weak, nameless, unsupported guy would dare to charge straight into the headquarters with guerrilla tactics learned from Fire Emblem. A virtual society but more logical than reality. What the game taught Ethan was not just fighting, but thinking, strategy, the value of effort. In real life, you can be judged by your appearance, circumstances, or rumors, but in the game, no one asks who your father is. As long as you defeat the boss, even a newbie is called a legend. Leo was silent. Something was too true. An era that forgets the essence, Ethan complained when he saw Leo playing mobile games. Memories on memories. Misunderstood rescues. Ethan continued, still in a monotone voice, still with emotionless eyes, as if he himself didn't know if he was telling a story to remember or to forget. Another time, he saved 3 villagers from being attacked by a ghost pig. A woman, her hands trembling, her eyes red, looked at him and knelt down to beg, "Please, if you intend to eat us, eat me first." He choked, not because of the words, but because of the look of fear, the look that no hero would want to receive from the person he saved. An upside-down world in Ferenthos, those with power who were not of noble birth were considered a disaster. Those who helped but were not part of a legitimate sect were called heretics. People who do not belong to any empire will be thrown into prison as a dangerous creature. Ethan once created a magical vase capable of filling itself with water by magic to save a village from thirst. The result? They broke the vase, tied me to a pole, and talked about hanging me because that magic is not in the Light Bible. The beauty of kindness, sometimes a double-edged sword. I used to believe that kindness could touch people's hearts, Ethan said, his eyes now shining with skepticism. But I learned that, in that world, kindness without status is trampled like trash. Leo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The story sounded like a global satire disguised as fantasy. From a Superman from another world to a poor YouTube uncle, a week after waking up, Ethan knew how to use magic to make commercials to earn money. The sparkling hand gestures, some made-up incantations, and the absurdly serious expressions. His clips earned him 60,000 yen in advertising money. Leo asked him, "You saved the world, now you're filming a soft drink commercial? Is this world that cruel?" Ethan replied, "No, this world is still much kinder than Ferenthos." Games and faith, the uncle's last weapon. No one understood Ethan, no one believed Ethan, but the uncle survived because he had a strong belief. Games are the only thing that won't betray me. Games are where the rules are clear, kindness is rewarded, efforts are not stolen, evil must be punished, and most importantly, every character, no matter how eccentric, can become a hero. Leo smiled slightly after hearing this. Maybe I'm just a lost NPC trying to become the main character. A naked truth in a humorous guise. People laughed when Ethan said, "In that world, I was once threatened by a girl to turn into a mount." People burst out laughing when they learned that a monk asked him to give up his life for evil magic. People laughed because it was a joke. Only Ethan, the one who actually lived that story, didn't laugh. Conclusion: a world that doesn't need heroes. Leo's room now has another weirdo, an uncle from another world that no one understands, no one believes, but Leo knows, somewhere in those seemingly crazy stories, is a very human truth, the desire to be recognized, to be loved, to be understood. No matter what world, everyone needs a place to belong. Hey Leo, in this era, does anyone still play Radiant Story? The question popped up on a rainy afternoon as Uncle Ethan sat typing out a description for a new YouTube clip, his eyes glued to the dusty game box. Leo turned around confused. "What Radiant?" Ethan sighed. "I knew it. In this era, no one remembers the masterpieces that used to be treasures anymore." Games, where memories never betray. In the chaotic world Ethan experienced, where magic was controlled by churches, where kindness was seen as a trap. Games, yes, games, were the only place he found something called fairness. In games, if you grind enough, you level up. If you're smart, you beat the boss. And in real life? If you're good, people say you're weak. If you're good, people say you're lucky. If you fail, people call you a burden. Ethan once said, "When I was in Ferenthos, I used the tactics from Final Fantasy VI to defeat an army of 300 monsters with just a spear." Leo was surprised. "And it really worked?" Ethan nodded. They had never seen anyone so reckless, because in that world no one thought that a weak, nameless, unsupported guy would dare to charge straight into the headquarters with guerrilla tactics learned from Fire Emblem. A virtual society but more logical than reality. What the game taught Ethan was not just fighting, but thinking, strategy, the value of effort. In real life you can be judged by your appearance, circumstances, or rumors, but in the game, no one asks who your father is. As long as you defeat the boss, even a newbie is called a legend. Leo was silent. Something was too true. An era that forgets the essence, Ethan complained when he saw Leo playing mobile games. "Why do you think games are now just a place for gotcha, spin cards, top up? All strategies, efforts, and intelligence are replaced by wallets." Leo shrugged. "Because people are busy, Uncle. Who has time to play 80 hours? Ethan replied, "That's why society created the concept of Feeling empty. Unequal battle, Ethan versus technology. My uncle once mistakenly bought a flip phone thinking that more buttons means power. The result? The phone used old radio waves and couldn't make calls. Leo shook his head, but Ethan wasn't ashamed. Real gamers have to choose iconic devices, like the sword Legendary Rusted Blade. It looks rusty but destroys gods. YouTuber journey and the slap of reality. Ethan once made 60,000 yen from a magic video, but then, overnight, the number of views plummeted and the number of subscribers plummeted. The reason? He replied to the comment, too bluntly. If my video makes you sleepy, I suggest you check your ability to absorb basic magic. This answer caused 120 subscribers to turn around in an hour. Social media, where words are stronger than truth. In the other world, you were accused of heresy because you used miracles without religious censorship. Here you are accused of being toxic because you don't know how to respond tactfully. Leo asked, "Do you think social media is different from the other world?" Ethan smiled. "No difference. It's just, in the other world, people hang themselves with ropes. Here, people hang themselves with the enter key." A deeper story than a gamer. After all, Ethan is not just a strange uncle living in nostalgia. He is a victim of two worlds. In Ferenthos, he was rejected for not following the norm. In the modern world, he was laughed at for not being able to adapt. But Leo realized Ethan is still alive, still resilient, because he has something that few people can keep: pure passion and absolute belief in the value of effort. Conclusion: the eccentric between two worlds. One night, Leo asked, "Do you regret spending your youth playing games?" Ethan lifted his eyes from the screen, slowly saying, "If there were no games, I would have died in that world. If there were no games, I could not survive in this world." Then he smiled, a smile that was both ironic and proud. "Games are more than just a hobby. They saved me from being wiped out twice. This world may not need gamers, but gamers always know how to survive." In Ethan's fragmented memories, there was one thing that kept repeating over and over again: eyes. Not those of enemies, not those of the villagers who were resentful, but those gentle, shy eyes that shattered into despair. The eyes of the silver-haired girl in the snowy forest, Miriel. The eyes of the cold swordsman standing in the middle of the ice temple, Mabel. And the eyes of the brave priestess in the royal capital, Elvira. They all turned to him. But he never turned to look at them like a man would look at the woman he loved. The first girl, the curse of ice. Miriel was the first person Ethan saved during an avalanche in the northern region. She had the ability to create ice, but that was also why she was abandoned by the village, a girl who lived in the cold and longed to touch someone's warmth. "I'm not an easy person to love," she once said, "but if you're not afraid of ice, then stay." Ethan just nodded, then quietly walked on. Not out of hatred, nor out of indifference. It's just that he didn't know how love was expressed. I thought she just wanted to rent a room together to save money on food. When romance is replaced by naivety, Leo, when he heard this, didn't know whether to laugh or sigh. He looked at his uncle, who had defeated a fire dragon, unsealed a divine weapon, survived thousands of dangers, but was helpless before a shy smile from his daughter. Ethan continued, about Mabel, a strong swordsman who always hid her fear in cold armor. She once said, "When I look at you, I see the shadow of someone who saved me when I was little." At that time, I didn't dare to believe it was true, but now I want to believe it. The uncle replied, "Oh, then that person must look familiar. Can you draw his face so I can confirm?" A heart that doesn't know how to beat, or once knew but forgot. Ethan wasn't incapable of feeling emotions. It was just that he didn't dare. In Ferenthos, every relationship could become a burden. A touch, a gentle word could lead to a life, an execution, a heresy sentence. I used to think the less I connected, the longer I would survive. But then he realized he had never truly lived. Elvira, Faith and Sacrifice. The last person was Elvira, a nun with a strong belief in justice. She was the only one who dared to defend Ethan in front of the church, despite being excommunicated. I believe you. Even if the whole world calls you a monster, I will still believe. Ethan has never forgotten those words. Only, what did he reply with? A sentence to erase memories, a wave from afar, a turn away, without looking back. Why can't a person who lives for reason understand emotions? Leo once asked, "Have you ever loved anyone?" Ethan was silent for a long time, then he replied, "I think maybe I have loved. But I'm afraid, if I call it love, I will hurt that person." An old notebook, locked memories. Ethan had a notebook, old and tattered, recording memories in another world. Some pages were just scattered notes. Some pages were apologies that no one accepted. One page reads, "She looked at me with eyes that seemed to be asking for help. I saved her from the monsters, but not from loneliness." Another page reads, "Elvira. If you read this, please forgive me, for I was too cowardly to believe in a place called home. Memories, if not shared, become chains." Leo finished reading the book and said softly, "Uncle, love doesn't have to be big words. Sometimes it's just staying, holding hands, nodding." Ethan smiled, a smile that was neither sad nor happy. You learned so much to survive, but you forgot to learn how to love. The story of those frozen by fear. In Faranthos, everyone is afraid of loss. Mabel is afraid of being called a coward. Muriel is afraid of hurting others. Elvira was afraid of betraying her faith. Ethan was afraid that if he gave his feelings away, he would be the one to be broken. A late lesson, but never too late. When Ethan's video about Muriel was accidentally reposted and received thousands of sympathetic comments, he was silent for a long time. Leo saw him sitting in front of the screen, staring at the comment. "I used to be a girl like Muriel. Thank you for telling her story." That was the first time Ethan shed tears, not because of regret, but because for the first time in his life, he understood the feeling of having a part of his memory listened to by someone. Conclusion: love is not lost, it is just waiting to be called by name. Even though he had returned, even though he had awakened, Uncle Ethan's heart was still stuck somewhere in Faranthos, not because of magic, not because of war, because there he lost himself. But if Leo and those who watched his videos are still listening, then perhaps love still has a place to return. Ethan Blake's life, or rather, the uncle who survived from another world, was passing by at a strange pace, in a modern city where everyone was busy, everyone was online, and he was still regularly using magic to pour water into a teapot. Leo watched the scene from afar and could only sigh. "Uncle, tap water can do that too." Ethan nodded, deep in thought like a sage. But tap water doesn't have spiritual ideas. When reality is a fatal blow, there is no game over. The uncle had thought that returning to Japan, the place where he was born, would help him restore some of his old life. But no. The small room that Leo rented for him was no different from an old NPC's temporary base. He had no identification, no bank account, no medical records. The fact that he was in a coma for 17 years and woke up with a little magic was not recognized by any administrative organization. I thought if I told the truth, I would get the same attention as those people with amnesia in movies. Who would have thought they would just give me a welfare application? That statement made Leo both amused and heartbroken. The virtual world, where Ethan tried to cling Ethan, started to take YouTube seriously. Although his filming skills were still bad, his commentary was dry, and the lighting was like a low-budget horror movie, he did it with all the seriousness he could muster. His channel had strange videos: how to suppress fire with wind magic, testing a summoning spell with dishwashing liquid, bare-handed battle with a phantom bear. At first, the audience thought it was a parody, but when he live-streamed and made an iron door disappear, people started to panic. "CGI is really good," one person commented. "He's delusional because he's been in a coma for so long." another wrote. But what if it's real? A rare doubter. Ethan didn't answer. He just quietly pulled a chair closer to the camera, looked straight into the lens, and said, I don't need you to believe. I just need you to watch. The irony of a celebrity no one believes. Views increased gradually. Subscriptions also increased accordingly. But the more famous he became, the more critical, sarcastic, skeptical, and sarcastic comments he received. Leo once said, you should learn to respond to comments gently, avoid controversy. Ethan's eyes widened. Why do you have to be gentle with people who call you crazy? They use words like knives. Why do you have to wrap them in velvet? The online community is not like otherworldly monsters. They do not attack with fangs or claws, but with laughing emojis and dislike buttons. However, despite being cursed, the uncle still posts videos regularly, not for money, but because that is how he exists in this world. Being alone in the city is not for me. Ethan has a habit of taking walks at midnight, not to cool off, but because that is the only time the city is quiet enough for him to not feel lost. In the other world, I can walk alone among monsters and still know I am on the right path. Here, I walk among people, and I feel invisible. Once he helped a person who had his belongings stolen. He used magic to tie up the robber, then left. The police called him to the police station. You suffocated people with, what, compressed air? The uncle simply replied, it's the forbidden holy wind technique, level 3. They gave him a warning. Leo almost got fined. YouTube took down the video for uncontrolled, dangerous behavior. A nonconformist. The uncle couldn't do office work because he didn't know how to use Excel. He couldn't be a delivery man because he didn't have a GPS smartphone. He couldn't be a waiter because his reflexes were too fast, sometimes sending a glass of water flying into the customer's face, which he considered unusual killing intent. Leo laughed. Uncle, this world doesn't accept heroes. Just be on time and say thank you. But maybe he didn't need to belong. Ethan paused one morning while editing a video. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he turned to Leo and asked, do you think, should someone like me try to fit in? Or should I just live as a blemish in this system? Leo thought for a moment, then replied, I'm not sure the world needs you to fit in. But I think it needs you to exist, to remind people that not everyone needs to fit into the mold. A different kind of existence, but not meaningless. The uncle is not like other people. He doesn't have a fancy CV. He doesn't have a degree. He doesn't understand YouTube analytics. But he can create a charm to ward off nightmares, translate the sound of sparrows chirping in the morning, understand the loneliness of a forgotten soul, and in a world that is becoming more and more similar, perhaps, that is the most precious thing. Conclusion: inclusion is not always the key. It's a choice Ethan doesn't need to try to be normal, because it's his difference that makes him real, alive, and irreplaceable. YouTube may not understand him. The government may ignore him. But Leo and those who watch his videos are slowly realizing sometimes what the world needs is a different uncle, someone who reminds us living differently, there's no such thing as means living wrongly. The city waits for no one. Every day passes like a tiring loop where people are caught up in the whirlwind of work, news, deadlines, and superficial social relationships. Among those crowds, Ethan Blake, the otherworldly uncle, still lives a quiet and out-of-sync life. He doesn't know how to run KPIs, doesn't use an e-wallet, and still believes that a washing machine is a tool that combines magic tools and low-level water magic. But right in that world, he begins to create change. Once, when Leo was seriously ill, had a high fever, and was lying in his room, Ethan didn't panic, didn't call an ambulance, didn't live stream to call for help. He just quietly placed his hand on Leo's forehead, drew a few strange characters with wind magic, and whispered a spell in Ferenth. This is the healing spell I used on a little girl who was injured in the battle at the Silver Mountains. It was very cold at that time. She was shaking like you. Leo smiled in his sleep. The next morning, his fever subsided. I don't know if it was because of the spell or just a psychological effect. But Ethan didn't say anything more. He just stood there looking at the sunlight shining through the window like an old knight listening to the beat of time. Little things, but unforgettable. When he saw a child afraid of injections in the hospital near his house, the uncle walked over, took out a low-grade courage talisman from his pocket, put it in the child's hand and said, "Just hold this talisman, you won't feel any pain." The child looked at him, eyes wide open. The needle was still piercing the skin, but it didn't cry. And after the nurse left, the child clutched the talisman, made of cardboard with a scribble of a dragon, drinking tea, and smiled. "Thank you, magician." Ethan turned away, his hand clasped lightly as if trying to hide a very real joy, the joy of being called by his name, not out of doubt, but out of trust. When magic becomes courage one day, the city lost power. The train station was jammed, the loudspeaker system was paralyzed, people were bustling, jostling, panicking. Ethan, who happened to be there, stepped into the crowd and used his magic to amplify his voice. "Please stay calm. The emergency exit is on the west side near door number 2. Move in rows, do not push. If anyone is having trouble, please raise your hand for help." No one knew who he was, but people listened. An old lady almost fell down. He helped her up. A child cried. He turned a ball of light into a toy. A blind man lost his way. He held his hand and led him away. No divine light, no grandeur like in the movies. Just an uncle in an old hoodie, among the bewildered crowd, calm, kind, and trustworthy. The video was recorded by a student and posted on TikTok. Just a few hours later, it went viral. A strange man used his voice to lead hundreds of people out of the train station during a power outage. Who is this? Ethan didn't know the video. He didn't care. He was at home, editing a new video on how to make a mosquito repellent from a fantasy root. When the lessons aren't in the textbook, Leo, when he watched the video again, cried. Not because his uncle was being praised, but because during the time he lived with his uncle, he never thought of this. That strange man, even though no one believed him, always acted like a hero. No need to be recognized, no need to be honored. The mindset of a survivor and the heart of a protector, Ethan once said, "In another world, if you save one person, you might cause 3 others to die. Every action is a gamble, so before saving anyone, I always ask, is this worth it?" Leo asked back, "So when you saved those people at the train station, did you think so?" Ethan smiled. "No. Because I know if I don't save them, I won't be able to sleep that night." Cool moments sometimes come from compassion, not strength. Not when shooting sparks, not when summoning a sealing charm. But when the uncle sat waiting next to a stranger crying in the park, quietly left a cup of hot tea beside him, and then left without asking why. Or when he came to Leo's class and used a little magic to turn the podium into a star, just to illustrate his nephew's presentation on modern faith. Touching not because of the dialogue, but because of the presence Ethan never preached. He didn't say flowery words like, "live a good life." He was just there when people needed him. And gradually, people remembered him not as the crazy guy cosplaying a magician, but as the old man who knows how to make beautiful handmade items. The person who helps me not lose sleep because of nightmares. The nameless protector during the power outage. Conclusion, a hero who doesn't need a title. Ethan Blake, the otherworldly uncle, finally found a place, not on the map, not in the household register, but in the hearts of the people he helped, even if only once. A hero is not the strongest person, nor is he the most praised person, but he is the one who dares to step up when no one else will stand up. Tokyo at night was no different from the deep forests of Ferenthos, at least in Uncle Ethan's eyes. The buildings towered like ancient watchtowers. The lights flickered like signals from fire spirits. The bustling crowd, hurried, emotionless, was like villagers fleeing the wrath of a newly awakened dragon. Ethan didn't hate this world. It was just, sometimes he found it dangerous in a quieter way. An unusual call in the middle of the night. Uncle Ethan, Leo's voice rang out on the phone, panicked. Something's wrong. In the park near my school, there's something not human. Ethan didn't ask much. He just stepped out of the house holding a folded piece of paper charm with a drawing of a chicken. Instinct charm detects S-class creatures and above. When Tokyo has a hidden boss. When he arrived, he saw the streetlights flickering, not a single person, but the air was unusually quiet. Then from the darkness, a giant black shadow crawled out. It looked like a half-dragon, half-machine creature. Its eyes glowed red. Its teeth were big enough to crush a bus. Leo shouted, "It's not human, it's like the creature in my game, but no one summoned it." Ethan looked closely. It's not a summon. It's a magical recreation of memories. Someone used an image in their imagination to create a physical entity. In other words, Tokyo had just had an unexpected hidden boss, rendered directly from the hallucination of an overplaying gamer with a little bit of spirit energy leaking out. An unplanned battle, but perfect for stress relief. The uncle clenched the talisman, muttering softly, "Wind fire wheel, wind magic twisted with passion." Then he shot into the air. A spiral of fire erupted, wrapping around him like a red dragon. The monster roared. Ethan landed, unleashing a magical kick that cracked the surface of the park like dry skin. The wind swirled, sweeping away the trees, waking up the birds and flying around. Leo hid behind the vending machine, exclaiming, "You're not going to clean up this mess, are you?" Funny paradox, because this uncle doesn't know how to balance strength. Ethan once said, "In another world, if you hit weakly, you'll die. If you hit too hard, you'll be worshipped like a god." At this time, the uncle shouted, "Water wall spin, block the direction of evasion." The water from the park tap immediately flew up, twisting into a wall, pushing the monster between the two magic shafts. And now, Ethan pulled out the last charm, a thin sheet with the words, "Goodbye." "I'll log you off the server." Boom. White light erupted, the sky shook slightly. The monster disintegrated into sparkling pixel codes, as if it had never existed, but the ground was split in two. The fountain lost its dragon head. Leo looked at his uncle, his face pale. "You just blew away the entire park floor." Ethan put his hands on his hips, saying, "Because I took the shortcut. I hit the virtual gravity point instead of waiting for it to lose health." Viral video, the internet calls Ethan Wizard of Shibuya. Someone recorded the battle. The video reached over 5 million views in 2 days. The press reported ambiguously, "Strange light phenomenon in the park. Is it related to a magician? The man in the hoodie and wool hat, is it cosplay or a chosen one?" Ethan was still calmly editing the new clip about how to keep flowers alive with low-level air. Leo was having a headache because of the YouTube email. "Hello, your channel has reached 100,000 subscribers. Please verify your identity to receive the silver button." Leo looked at Ethan, who was sticking a charm on the bonsai tree. "Uncle, we can buy a new hard drive." Ethan nodded. "Good, because the last fight with the silver wolf still hasn't released all the sound effects." A funny moment, but also full of metaphors, Leo said, "Uncle, do you think that fight was accidental, but the effect was so great?" Ethan thought for a moment. "You know, in the other world, I accidentally saved the whole kingdom because I got lost and went into the dragon's cave." Leo laughed. "You're a lost cause, right?" Ethan shook slightly. "No mistake, son. I'm just always in the right place at the wrong time. A cool type that doesn't make it to the cover of magazines, but everyone remembers the uncle wasn't thanked by the government. No TV interviews, no advertising contracts or show invitations. But every time someone mentions the uncle in the park, someone remembers the white light, the man floating in the sky, and a strange feeling that he was safe. Conclusion: a legend doesn't need fireworks, just a moment of not turning away. Ethan Blake, the mage lost in the modern world, is not a hero written in textbooks, but when needed, he never turns his back. Never ask, who is responsible? Just ask, Here now, who needs protection? And sometimes just that is enough to become a legend. One late autumn morning when the leaves began to fall like fragile lines of memories, Ethan Blake, the otherworldly uncle, received the most unexpected thing, an invitation to return. Not an email, not an envelope, but a crack in the air, shaped like a magical portal, quietly opened in the middle of the living room. Leo was playing a game, looked up and saw it, almost dropped the controller. "Uncle, that portal, do you know what it is?" Ethan did not answer immediately. He stood up, staring at the swirling light. Then he said softly, "That's the way back to Ferenthos. A choice that only appears once in a lifetime. The portal is no joke. It doesn't last forever. Not everyone sees it. And once you enter, there's no turning back." Leo swallowed. "Are you planning on going?" Ethan didn't look at him, just said, "I was sent there without a choice. This time I was invited. But for what, I don't know. Is it to continue fighting? Is it to fix something? Or just to finish something unfinished? And here, is it called home? 17 years in Ferenthos, Ethan couldn't find a place to rely on. 3 years in Japan, no one really considers him as a normal person. But now he has Leo. There is a small community of people following him on YouTube, believing that magic is more than just a trick. There are a few strangers who have been helped by him and never forget the favor. "I can't keep you, but I will miss you." Leo said that, then walked out, leaving Ethan alone with the crack of light waiting. The gate invites, but does not force. Ethan came to sit down. No words, no actions. He just takes out the old notebook, the one that records every memory in the other world, and turns the last page. The page is still blank. He picks up the pen, writes, "The day I can choose is not the day I am strongest, but the day I know most clearly who I am." And then he does the unthinkable. He tears the page, folds it into a paper crane, and drops it into the light gate. He is not leaving. He is sending a part of his memory back. The choice to stay, not because he is afraid to leave, but because he has found a reason to stop Ethan, does not enter the gate, not because he is afraid to return, not because he hates that world, but because now, after all, he has something to call life. Leo turned around, surprised to see that the portal had disappeared. "You aren't leaving?" Ethan shook his head. "I realized not every door that appears is for me to enter. There are doors just for me to say goodbye." And then he posted a video with a very different title. Not "How to Create a 3-Layer Wind Spell," not "Review of the Super Dehumidifying Charm," but "If you ever feel like you don't belong in this world, this video is for you." In the video, Ethan just sits. No effects, no tricks. He said, "I used to be a person lost between two worlds. One world where I was hunted for being different, and one world where I was laughed at for being lost. But I still lived, because I understood sometimes not belonging anywhere is an opportunity to belong to yourself." That video reached 10 million views in a week. The comments started to come in, no longer mocking, but sympathetic. "I used to think I was useless, but now I see that I was just not at the right time. Thank you for not entering the gate, because this world still needs people like you. I used to be a kid who was called weird. Now I am learning talisman drawing from you." Ethan did not become a legend, but became an icon. A person who did not live by the standards, a person who never fit in, but also the first person to dare to say living differently is not living wrongly, and finally it is still everyday life. The uncle continued to make videos. Leo is still practicing the magic game, imitating his skills. Someone has opened a Learning Everyday Talismans club at school. But in the midst of it all, Ethan still stopped, looked up at the sky, and smiled very slightly. Because he knew he could have walked away, but he chose to stay, and that was the most powerful magic he had ever used. Conclusion: choose to live, not because someone called your name, but because you want to stay. The world doesn't need you to be a hero. It doesn't need you to defeat dragons or create barriers. It just needs you to dare to be yourself. Dare to stay even though no one asks, and dare to believe that the wounds, the differences, the loneliness can all become strength if you continue to live. Ethan Blake, no longer the otherworldly uncle, but a normal person, living an unusual life, but never meaningless,